Ooh, that looks tasty.
You are a Paragon, almost a god. It's time to show your dominance over the other Paragons. Choose your avatars, invest them with your power, and send them into battle. Only the greatest will emerge victorious. Welcome, folks! Today, the Hungry Gamer has yet another Kickstarter preview. This time, it is a Paragon, Trials of the Chosen, designed by Ryan Hall and published by Midwinter Mages. This game is going to be coming to Kickstarter in August or perhaps September, so make sure you keep an eye out for it. As soon as I have the link to it, I will certainly make it available to everyone in the description right down there. As always, please do make sure you turn on the Klingon subtitles, because in the event that I do make a mistake on a rules explanation, that is where you will find the correction. And I also need to say that this is a prototype version of the game. Some of the art may change, some of the abilities may change a little bit, and these large cards here are also prototypes, as they are trying to figure out if that's something that they want to offer as a stretch goal or not. Let's put all that aside, and let's talk a little bit about what this game is. So, Paragon, Trials of the Chosen, is an expandable card game. Note that I said expandable, not collectible. For those of you that don't know, the difference between those two is collectible card games like Magic the Gathering, you're constantly buying booster packs and you're hoping, oh, please, 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 to get the card that you want. An expandable card game, you buy the expansion and everyone gets all of the same cards, period, done. And then the last thing that you need to know is that this particular head-to-head card game is designed to involve absolutely zero luck. Everything about it is strategic. And so let me explain how that is possible very quickly. So the way the game works is that each player gets to pick two of these avatars. And these represent various mortals that you, the Paragon, are investing with your power. And each of these Paragons has a different, if you see down here at the bottom, discipline that they follow. And this will allow you to pick cards to go into your deck. So you'll see that Sky here, my guild assassin, had a shadow discipline, while my other avatar here, Orion, the time sage, has a chronomancy discipline. And so that means all of the cards in my deck have to come from one of those two disciplines, and you can look right down here. Chronomancy is what the Singularity uses, so I can put it into my deck. This deck over here is made up of Shadow and Chronomancy cards, and this deck over here is made up of Chivalry and Divinity cards. Now, back to what I was saying about there is no luck. When you construct your deck, which is 20 cards, you take it and you put it in whatever order you want. Whatever card you want to be in your starting hand, you put them on top in the top 4 cards. And you do not shuffle it. Your deck is never, ever shuffled, even when you start the game. So you are literally stacking your deck in the order that you want to play. You make your game plan before the game, and you're going to try to implement it. Now, there are some cards that might make you reorder your deck or something like that, in small ways, not a full shuffle, but you know what's coming. In fact, you can actually look at your deck at any time in the game and say, oh, okay, this is what I have coming, great, okay, wonderful. So there's that part, which takes away all the luck. Now you'll see I do have some dice out here. We're not rolling the dice. These dice are simply used to track the mana pool that you build up, the energy pool that you build up. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Now, before I dive into that in any more detail, let's talk a little bit about how you set up the game after you picked your deck, after you stacked your deck. So what's going to happen is each player, they start with 4 cards. So I'm going to go ahead and put the 4 out as an open hand. You would not normally play it open, but that's very boring to play looking at the back of cards. Now, so what happens at the beginning of each round? And you determine randomly who's going to go first. Just for the sake of argument, going left to right, I'll say that this team will be going first. And so the way you win the game is you defeat both of the other players' avatars. If you defeat both of the other players' avatars, the Paragon has lost, and they are gone. They disintegrate into the nothingness of chaos or wherever it is that they happen to go. Now, the last thing that you have to do before you actually start playing after you've drawn is you give your avatars these mana crystals. And I'll show you how you know what they are by describing the anatomy of these cards. So what you have is here you have the avatars straight up attack power. If they want to punch you in the face, that's how much damage they do. Orion does nothing. This is their health, and this is how many mana crystals they start with, and that's going to make a little more sense later on. Then there are their two abilities. And so this one here, you can duplicate any counter that is out there on the board. This might be a shield counter, it might be a mana counter, whatever. And then I can also spend 2 mana crystals that are on my card here to return a target equipped card to its owner's hand. So, oh, you got a sword there? Nope, no you don't, not anymore. And both of these have this symbol here, which means you exhaust the card, turn it sideways to represent that it has acted for the turn. And each of the characters has different starting abilities. Though all 4 of these, they all start with 2 mana crystals. Now the game is played in rounds, and a round is determined by players going back and forth doing single actions until both players pass. Once both players have passed, you move to the next round. Here you'll see I have this die marking round 1, and this is important because each round you gain a mana pool, and the mana pool is determined by the round you're in. We're in round 1, hooray, we each have 1 mana. Now, how do you use mana? Mana is used to play cards from your hand. So, and this is where the stacking of your deck is important, because you want to have cards out in your initial hands that you're going to be able to play. You don't want to have a card in your initial hand that's going to cost 6 or 7 mana, because it's going to be a really long time before you're able to play it. So if we look at my Venom Fang Blade, you'll see right here, it costs 1 mana. If it's used on an attack, it does 2 damage, and it can take 2 damage. And then down here, it's corrosive, and that's just a special ability. I'm not going to get into the special abilities, but they all do various different things. And when it is equipped to an avatar, the avatar loses 1 hit point. And this is a shadow weapon, so it has to be equipped to my guild assassin. And so, should I choose to use my action to play that, and I will right now, I have to use my 1 mana, that's all I have, so I'm going to move that to the side. And then I take the card and I play it, or equip it, to my avatar. I, as the Paragon, am giving the avatar this weapon to use. And as you can imagine, an avatar has 2 hands, so you have to look at how many hands a weapon or shield or whatever it takes. You can only use each hand once. This is a dagger, 1 hand. And it means I also take 1 point of damage. So there we go, I've thrown that on there. Now, when I bring a card out, it comes out exhausted. So turn it sideways. I can't use it. I imagine the idea is it's still slowly coalescing in my hand this round. And that's the end of my turn. Then I go over to my opponent. My opponent gets to do their turn. And again, they have 1 mana. So we're going to go ahead and just use that 1 mana. And I'm going to put out this Shield of Trials. And this can only be played on my Sir Aaron. It's a chivalry card. It costs 1 mana. It does 0 damage. It has 3 health. And I can use it, exhaust it, to give it the Guardian ability, which means you're basically hiding behind the shield, and you have to kill the shield before you can kill anything else. And if it ever gets unequipped, and the way things get unequipped is, for example, the Time Sage could say, nope, unequip that card. Or if it gets destroyed, it's unequipped because you're no longer using it, I would get to draw a card. So I will go ahead and put that down there. That's the end of the turn. And then we come back to my other team. Now the other thing you can use these crystals for is these represent mana. So you can also use them as straight up mana to cast these things out here. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to put out this Everbark Wand, which you see costs 1, can do 1 damage, has 3 health, and if I exhaust it, it just deals 1 damage directly. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second. And to do that, I'm going to use 1 of Orion's crystals. And that's the end of the turn. Then I come to the other side. Well, I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing, use a crystal, and put out this Blade of Retribution, which is also a Chivalry card. Have things we could do. These characters could attack, and just for your understanding, I'll go ahead and do that. So I'm going to say this character, Sky, is going to attack over here, but I'm not going to attack one of these characters. Instead, I'm going to do Sky's 2 damage to this sword. I'm going to break this sword before they are able to actually use it. So I'd be doing 2 damage to that sword, which would destroy it. However, Sir Aaron here, I'm going to pick this up so you can see, has an ability. He uses Lightning Bolt here. Any card that has a Lightning Bolt on it can be used instantly. So I exhaust him, and I redirect target attacking card to this avatar. So by turning this, I'm saying, no, 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 you're not going to hit my sword, you can hit me instead. And I'll take 2 damage and put it there. And so you kind of get the idea of how this first round might proceed. Now, we're just going to pretend that everybody has acted, and we're going to move on to the end of the round. So what happens at the end of the round is everyone draws 1 card. You'll see I have this Devolve card, and over here, a Bolster card. It doesn't matter particularly what it is that they do at the moment. And then we unexhaust everything. And then you mark up that you're in round 2, which means that each player gets 2 mana. And then you start the round again. Now, it's possible that the initiative, who goes first, has changed. You determine who goes first each round by, once you get to the end of the round where both players pass, whoever passed first gains the initiative. Now, it's important. It doesn't mean whoever passed first in the round, because I might say, pass, the other side does something, and then I might play a card. It's only when it goes pass, pass, round over. Now, a few other things that you need to understand to really get an idea of how the game works. So, I've already talked about these crystals here and how you can use them off of your avatars. Some of their abilities require crystals to use. So the question is, how do you get more crystals? Well, that's actually pretty easy. You can exhaust one of your characters and then use some of the mana that is out there. So I'm going to take 1 mana from my pool to give myself another crystal. The other thing that we need to understand is how these weapons work and how attacking works. Because unlike magic, you're not summoning different creatures, you're literally equipping your avatars with abilities and with weapons and armor and so on. That said, they do work a little bit like minions and creatures that you might have out there. So the image that I put in my head is really what's going on is these 4 avatars are running towards each other and colliding and clashing. And there's a lot of different things that they can do. So, for example, as my guild assassin Sky here charges in, she can attack with her blade. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attack with the blade. I'm going to take that blade and I'm going to hit her sword. And I'm doing that because I want to actually destroy that sword. Now, the Venom Blade does have an ability that if you damage an item, it gets destroyed because it's corrosive, but that's not the point at the moment. So the sword here, the dagger here, excuse me, does 2 damage. And so if I'm hitting that sword, and I'm going to let it go through, I do 2 damage to the sword. And that's enough to destroy it. But here's the interesting thing. When a piece of equipment hits another piece of equipment, there is what's called reciprocal damage. Again, the idea that these 2 avatars are clashing together and swinging their blades. And this sword does 1 damage. So even though this sword gets destroyed of its 2 damage, it's going to deal 1 damage to the blade I attacked with, as it takes a nice nick or whatever happens to it. Then this has been destroyed, so it gets discarded. But first you see, unequipped, deal 1 damage. So as this goes away, our Sir Aaron player gets to choose 1 thing to do a damage to, and it's going to go ahead and do a damage to that dagger. So it's also destroyed. And then we would go here to the other side. And just for argument's sake, I'm going to use Nethia's ability to restore. She's going to exhaust and heal Sir Aaron for 2 damage. Then we come back over here. And this time I want to use this wand. But I'm not going to attack with it because I don't want the wand to take damage. But if you look down here at the bottom, I can exhaust it and just deal a damage directly. As in I shoot my little magic missile out of the wand. And I'm going to go ahead and just do 1 damage over here to Nethia. But Sir Aaron says, no, 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 I'm going to take that damage. And he's going to exhaust immediately, and the damage is going to go there. Now, as I pointed out, Sky here, even though her dagger did damage, she has not done anything yet. So now I will use her and have her go ahead and do 2 damage to Sir Aaron there. Again, the image in my head is she's come charging in, she's swinging her dagger, she hits his sword, they both explode in shards of metal and energy and whatever, and then, but she's still there, so she goes ahead and she kicks him in the shin. That seems like a guild assassin type thing to do. And so the game goes back and forth like this. Each round, you wind up getting more and more mana until you get to the 10th round, and then every round thereafter you gain 10 mana. And I do believe they're hoping for a stretch goal it'll say 10, not the 0. And you go back and forth until someone has lost both of their avatars. Now, there's one more interesting thing I need to point out, because each of these avatars, if you defeat them, they're not quite dead yet. Like the Black Knight and Monty Python, I'm not dead yet. There's more that can be done. They have another side. So once they're defeated, they have one more thing that they can do. Once per game, equip target card in play to your other avatar. In other words, her spirit can steal anything that's out there and equip it to the other avatar. There's a different ability for each of these avatars. This fellow here, Sir Aaron, he actually turns into a big old sword that can be equipped, and you get the idea. Now, let's talk about what I like about this game. The first thing I'm going to start with is the artwork. The artwork is off the hook on these cards. So we look at Nethia here. That's a badass. Like, you don't want to mess with her. And I also will say I appreciate that it is a more realistic, I say realistic even though I'm talking about gods and avatars and all that stuff, but it's a more realistic portrayal. She looks like a warrior. Her armor makes sense. She's ready to rumble. The artwork, pretty much on everything, it's just so cool. As you can see right there. I mean, it's evocative, it's good to look at, it's just gorgeous. I love it. The next thing I really like is this idea of a no-luck game. I really like this idea that you're going to stack your deck and you know what's going to come up. There is none of this randomness. There's no shuffling your deck at the beginning and, well, you wound up getting a horrible draw, and they wound up with a great draw the first turn, and they're going to mop the floor with you. I like that the different disciplines and the cards that each one are able to use, they feel very thematic. They really seem like they fit the theme. The avatars that are available to be used, they really evoke what their discipline is. I think it's really well done. Now, I haven't seen all of the various cards and disciplines, but the ones I have seen I think are really well balanced. I also really like this idea of how the game is going to ramp up. And what I mean by that is, you start with only 1 mana, plus whatever your crystals are, but as you go, you're getting more and more, so you're able to use more and more cards. Now, I'll show you here. Like here, my second to last card is this Chameleon Crossbow, which costs 7 mana to get out there, but it can take 5 damage. It's quick, which means it doesn't come out exhausted, it comes out ready to use, and you have all these options. You can just deal straight 6 damage. You can deal 4 piercing damage, you can deal 1 corrosive damage, and so you just have all these options. This is an amazing card. But you gotta have 7 mana to use it, so you have to kind of wait more towards the end of the game. Or maybe you don't want to do that. Maybe you want to have it set up so it's going to come out in the 3rd round and you're going to save all your crystals so you can use it. Maybe you don't want to have towards the end of your deck these high value cards. You want to have some more low value cards, so suddenly in the 6th or the 7th round you're putting out 6 more things. There's all these different options, though I will say, if it ever comes a time that your draw deck is empty and you're supposed to draw, you lose the game immediately. This is a way to keep the time of the game down, because remember again, your deck is exactly 20 cards. So I really like all of that. I think this is out of all the card games that I've been reviewing lately, and there's a lot, is the most unique. Now, that is not to say that the other games aren't unique, because I've said in each single review that, oh, this is a unique game. But this one is super unique because there is zero luck. I have never run across a card game that is pure skill, pure strategy. Now, that's going to bring me into the questions I have about the games. Now, notice I'm saying questions, I am not saying negatives, because I don't think this is a negative. So the biggest challenge with this game is it's not one that you're just going to pick up and play. It is not a casual card game. The challenge here with this game is I think this is a mastery kind of game. If you like playing a game enough to where you develop skill at it, because this is a skill card game, then this is your game. My goodness, this is your game. And I've mentioned this in, I guess I've mentioned this in all of the card games that I've reviewed. There is the deck building aspect, and all the games have a deck building aspect that is important that you figure it out correctly, but not like this one. Because remember, you are seeding your deck, you are stacking your deck just how you want it, and if you mess that up, you're in a bad way. So what this means is that building the deck is just as much a part of the game as playing the game. And so that could be a turnoff for some people. Now, that said, if you're one of those people that revels in building the best deck, oh my god, this is your game. Seriously, this is your game. But that, of course, takes time, because you really have to go through and you have to figure out what kind of strategy do you want to play with. And then you got to find the card, you got to go through all the cards, and so on and so forth. Now, I will say, Midwinter Mages is intelligent enough that they are providing a bunch of different starter decks, and I believe the Kickstarter version itself will actually come with a few pre-assembled starter decks that you can just out and play with, which I think is a brilliant move, because clearly you get the game, you just want to take it out and play. You don't want to stop and build a deck first. That's silly. And then the other thing that does pop out as a bit of a challenge is the terminology. The hardest thing about this game is that you are equipping everything onto these avatars. You are equipping them with abilities. There's even one-shot cards, and I call them one-shot, so that, like this card right here, Singularity. Equipped. Gain initiative. In this round, exile this card. So what that actually means is, I can take this card, it's a Chronomancy, I can play it here, which means I'm going to gain the initiative for next round, and then I discard it. In other games, that's called an instant, or a one-shot. It's boom, done, out. But no, it's all called equipping, and I understand why they do that. They do that to keep the term the same, and everything else, equipping makes perfect sense. You are the Paragon, and you are investing the avatar with this ability to throw down a smoke bomb, or you are investing your avatar with the ability to rewind time really quickly, and then boom, it's gone. So I get that. Intellectually, I get that, but it's just really can be hard to follow. And when I played with my wife, she had a really hard time with that terminology. It makes sense with the weapons and the armor and all that, and even with the abilities, but when it's just boom and gone, it's a little bit tough. Now that said, that's all that I have to talk about that is negative or even really approaching in negative. So there you have it, folks. This is Paragon Trials of the Chosen. If you really enjoy mastering a game, if you enjoy deck building, if you enjoy pure, and I mean pure, strategy and skill games, and you enjoy Magic the Gathering or any other head-to-head card game, you do not want to miss this game. I will also add to this, I had the pleasure of meeting Ryan at Origins this year, and my goodness, you could not meet a lovelier human being. So take all of that for what you will, and if any of that sounds interesting, make sure you consider checking this out when it hits Kickstarter in just a few weeks. As always, I will say, if there was anything that I did wrong in the gameplay, and you happen to know how the game works already, let me know with a timestamp, and I'll put it in the Klingon subtitles. If there's anything that you just think could have been done better, let me know in the comments and I'll do my very best to do it in the future. And then finally, if you enjoyed this video, please like it, leave a comment about what it is you liked about the video, and as always, please subscribe. We have lots more unboxings, reviews, previews coming down the pipe. Thank you again for watching and have a wonderful, wonderful day.